Welcome to another episode of Space in the City. I'm Lisbeth Newton. We have today two experts on everything that has to deal with repiping, freezing weathers, which we're about to get in the Houston area. Chris Archer and Colin Cantu with Repipe Specialists of Texas. Hello, gentlemen, and welcome to the show.
Afternoon, ma'am.
Ma'am, how are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. So tell us, for people that are not familiar with, because we don't get freezing temperatures very often in this area, right? So what do we need to do? What do we need to be aware of to prevent the catastrophe of exploding pipes and water going everywhere in your house?
You know, you mentioned something that's very important. We don't get freezing weather very often, but when we do, our Houston infrastructure is maybe not quite built for it, if you will. And there's some things that are very important. Chris, go ahead, lead the way. Let's see what we have to offer for everyone.
You know, one of my main things that Colin being my regional manager, I deal with the in-house. He deals with the above my pay grade type stuff. But one of the common things that I see is cover your outside faucets. That is your number one spot where the cold is going to directly tie into your water lines, causing them to start freezing and breaking. And if they're not covered or any kind of preventative measure to make sure you're not giving yourself something you don't want, that's what it is. That's the number one. Anywhere where you would see water going into a home, cover it thoroughly. And by covering, just go to Home Depot, get that black foam insulation. And, you know, it may be wrong, but if you have to, use a pool noodle. It's pretty much the same thing, but wrap it up. Duct tape, electrical tape, some sort of tape. You want that thing wrapped up like it was your child. That will start the help of the process of making sure you don't end up with any leaky pipes after a big freeze.
Okay, so let me ask you this, which might be a stupid question, but the only stupid question really is the question that you don't ask. So I'm going to ask it anyway. Okay, so by outside faucets, you mean the faucets that you attach a hose to, right?
Yes, ma'am. So on your...
Go ahead. Is there any other faucet that, or anything else that you need to cover that's not a faucet you attach a hose to?
The only other spot I can truly think of, and this is what we're going to say on a basic home, right? You have your outside hose faucets where you tie up water hoses, but you have that main line too. And that's where most people would do their normal shut off of the water to the home. That needs to be wrapped as well, because that's leading directly to the city cutoff. And that would lead into maybe a main line burst as well, which luckily would not be in the home, but you're going to have a flooded yard. So where basically picture where it comes up out of the ground and then into the house, wrap all that up too.
Okay. And what about people that have pools or jacuzzis outside? What's the course there?
I have an inflatable hot tub in the backyard and I leave it at 104 all year round. I leave my pump running all year round. Never had a problem with it.
Okay. So the best course of action for your pool or a hot tub, jacuzzi that you have outside is to leave it at 104 degrees?
The degrees I don't think matters as much. You want to keep the water flowing. So if you keep your pumps running, as long as the water's flowing, it doesn't typically freeze. And a pool pushes enough water that I personally wouldn't have any worries on a pool line freezing. Now, I'll let Colin kind of chime in on dripping or not to drip within the home.
I think it's very important. You bring up a good question as far as pools or so on. You have to remember that some people have pools and they have a pool filler line that's going to run from a hose bib. And ultimately, it may be too late at this point to go to Home Depot or Lowe's. And we all know that big unfancy Whataburger foam cup. Stuff it with a towel, get it covered. You're trying to prevent wind from beating on that pipe and causing it to freeze prematurely. Secondarily, of course, there are homes with sprinklers. So you've got sprinkler bypass or reconnects. Try to wrap everything that you can with something that's going to break windage, right? Towels, anything that you can do to stop the wind from truly beating on that pipe and breaking it.
Okay. And what about, I know that you mentioned that for a pool or a hot tub, you just keep it running. What happens if the electricity goes out? Then what do you do? We had that happen not too long ago, right? Well, last year we had the whole freezing and some people did not have power for weeks on end.
At that point, you don't have a source of heat. So there are other things that you can really have on standby. We've seen Chris mention pool noodles around a pipe. If you could put a heat source to that location, a heat lamp or a light before, that way you keep it up to temperature. That way, if you do lose power, it's not as cool as it would be in the upcoming hours, if you will. And also hand warmers. Believe it or not, hand warmers wrapped inside of a pool noodle or any other type of element like a towel or so on can create some heat to put on some type of material like your inlet or a pool device or so on. So hand warmers actually have worked out well in the past.
That's a great idea. Okay. And any other tips, suggestions that y'all have for preventing the freezing pipe disasters?
We can't prevent water from freezing, but the option is you always have a different material that you can go with if it's in your home or so on, the material will freeze at a much lower rate. So there's different options that you could be preventative, but at this point for this hour in the day, I think what we're having here is to apply heat early. That way you're not back in a corner trying to save a pipe at the end.
Okay, perfect. And luckily in Houston, when it does freeze, it doesn't stay frozen all day long into the next day, into the next week. So we do have that going for us, right?
Correct. We'll break above 32, which is the best part. Even if it's not sunny outside, if we can have temperatures above 32, water will thaw. There will be more flow, and of course, more flow leads to a pipe that's not going to be as frozen or as quickly. So Chris mentioned, I think it's a good idea to drip a faucet to a degree. You'll want to drip both hot and cold at a very, very, very small rate, solely to stop water from not moving. If we can create just a little bit of flow, that will slow down the process of a frozen pipe inside the home. On the exterior as well for a faucet.
Okay, so you're talking about all the faucets outside, and you're also talking about all the faucets inside, kitchen, bath. What about the tubs, the bathtubs, showers?
The tubs are a little harder to run a hot and cold line very slow because most of your newer single handle valve systems combine your hot and cold. Now, if you do have, the old style 2 or 3 handles, you could drip your hot and cold. For the bathroom portions and even into the kitchen, my recommendation is to open up all of your cabinets, get that hot air under there, leave it there, and drip your sinks. That's going to run hot and cold throughout the house. The ones we can't run, we want to do as much as we can to prevent them from freezing. So I was actually going to mention too, we started kind of out at the hose bibs, but you need to go up in your attic too. You need to make sure your pipes are covered, they're wrapped, they're insulated somehow.
Okay, all great tips. So make sure to wrap your attic pipes as well. Okay, and in the event that someone maybe doesn't do any of this and there's water all over the place, they did not prepare in advance correctly, what should they do now?
Call Repipe Specialist.
Call Repipe Specialist. That's a great idea.
First thing you need to do is find out where you can shut your water off, get your water off as soon as you possibly can. Depending on the house, you may have isolated shutoffs, but if it were me or even Colin, I'm going to go out to the main. I'm going to shut the water off to the house because if there's one leak, there's definitely the possibility of multiple that you don't know about yet.
Okay, perfect. And is there anything else that we did not cover that you all would like to share?
One very important thing. If you are going to vacate your home, or even if you decide to stay there and you're worried about your pipes breaking or freezing or so on, turn off the valve at the main in the yard. Also turn off the valve at the inlet of the home. And don't forget to go inside and flush all the toilets and turn all the sinks on, because what you want to do is evacuate the water from the current pipe. A pipe cannot break if there's no water inside of it. So just because you turn the water off doesn't mean the pipe cannot freeze and break. You want to evacuate all the water after you turn the water off. So let's empty the pipes. Then there's nothing to be broken, if you will. That's the safest idea that you have, especially if you're leaving and you're not going to be at home to watch your home in case something happens.
That is excellent advice. I think that is the most simplest advice I've heard in a very long time about what to do to prevent your house from going through a catastrophe. Thank you, gentlemen, for taking your time to jump on Space in the City and share these tips with us. We really appreciate it, and we look forward to doing more of these segments down the road.
We'll absolutely provide all of the homeowners that reach out to you all with a Houston City Beat allocation. That way, if there's an additional insight that they'd like, we can provide additional discount for them.
All right, perfect. Well, thank you so much, gentlemen, and have an excellent day.
Pleasure.
Thank you. Stay warm out there.